Let us join together in prayer. We give thanks for all the generations before us that have shared a witness to the power of love to sustain us through the living of our days, whatever that may bring. Amen. Every summer, yes. Nope. It's on. They're asking me about the mic. My mic's on. Okay? Okay. Every summer, for generations, girls eagerly headed to Camp Mystic in Texas on the banks of the Guadalupe River. They followed sisters, mothers, grandmothers even, in heading to this retreat, this bit of heaven on earth. An article about the camp describes it this way: but the campers will never be able to explain the magic exactly to anyone who isn't there. It's impossible to put into words for an outsider what it feels like to spend time in this sacred place where so many girls have turned into themselves. Everyone was at the camp for the best of reasons: to hike, fish, canoe, sing, pray, lean in closer to the divine, make friends. The girls were there to thrive, to learn, to enjoy, to take delight in creation. But then the river rose, flooding ensued, and 27 were killed from the camp, including campers, staff, counselors, and the director. It was an unimaginably devastating loss. So many lives at the camp and beyond swept away. There are so many more tragedies that we could mention that leave us bereft. And so someone in the congregation requested a sermon about loss. I know that many, I would dare say most, in this sacred space this morning have been touched by devastating loss. A family member killed in a DUI, or dying by suicide, or abruptly taken by a rare illness or accident. We're confronted with dealing with death at every age, not just the death of the generations who've gone before us, which is also a difficult loss, leaving us orphaned. And we live each day trying to keep our fear of death at bay. In this life, loss is inevitable. And it's not limited to death and tragedy. We experience the loss of relationships, some kind of breach that cannot be overcome. We know the losses that accompany relocation. We leave friends, neighbors, familiar surroundings behind. There's the loss when we must leave our homes and we lose our connection to place, to land, to legacy. There's the loss we experience as life progresses and we realize that some of the doors once open to us are now closed. We're not going to make the gymnastics team for the Olympics. We're not going to head a Fortune 500 company. We're not going to have a child. And there are the losses of assumptions, attitudes, hopes, dreams, and ideals. We see that some of the things we've given our lives to are not going to come to fruition in our lifetime. We had a church member many years ago, a retired UCC clergy person. I remember her telling me one time, and she was around 80 years old. She said, "I just want to see the end of patriarchy in my lifetime." Well, she died and we still have patriarchy, bless her soul. Along life's journey, most of us will experience the loss of a job, a livelihood, a calling, a career, and the relationships, resources, and sense of purpose that may have gone with that work. Sometimes that loss comes abruptly without warning, knocking us for a loop. And sometimes the loss comes in the context of retirement, so often a time of joy and grief. This past week, we saw the beautiful movie, The Last Class, a moving memoir of Professor Robert Reich's retirement. After falling in love with teaching and holding significant government posts in various administrations, Reich ends his professional career as a professor at UC Berkeley. He talks openly about the transition, the loss. He tells how on a visit to his doctor just before his official retirement, he broke down crying. It surprised him. He said the doctor, who looked to be in her 30s, was very kind about the whole thing. Well, we all know loss. Sometimes we experience loss that's financial. We lose money on an investment, or there's a drastic change in our income, and this necessitates significant changes in our lifestyle. And we experience loss of habits, of comforts and activities we're used to, maybe fancy vacations, eating out, private school for the kids, many things. No longer part of our lives. We may even lose our home. Some years ago, the church hosted about 25 homeless people for 3 months in the fellowship hall. I listened to their stories about how they found themselves houseless. Often it was related to job loss, or the end of a relationship, or a health issue. Let's turn to health. Health issues are a significant source of loss in this life. Yes, there are the things we die from earlier than expected, and there are losses involving declining abilities, like hearing loss, declining sight, loss of strength and balance, trouble breathing, disease, loss of mental acuity and memory. So many losses, often incremental, but significant nonetheless. When do you head out for a bike ride, not even knowing you will not be doing that again? Or take a swim at the beach, not knowing it will be your last? We had a church member years ago who experienced drastic hearing loss. She told me she really didn't see why she should keep coming to church since she couldn't hear anything. I told her she could smile, she could still hug people. Was that reason to come? I don't know. She kept coming until she was no longer physically able, and she donated the money for a hearing amplification system for the sanctuary to enhance hearing for others. And whether we realize it or not, we are all experiencing the loss of the earth as we know it. Human-induced climate change is drastically altering our world and our lives. And this is a severe, painful, psychic loss that we may or may not even be aware of. It may just be too painful to let into our daily consciousness. It sometimes feels too big to incorporate into our reality. Maybe our sense of loss about how the planet is changing will help us to see how precious the earth is so that we take drastic steps to preserve it. There's so many ways we experience loss in this life. There's death, most painful, the death of loved ones, a spouse, a child, a friend. So many losses scattered through the living of our days. And there's a loss of innocence as well as existence. Is this cruel? Was loss built into our lives as punishment to torment us? I will never believe that. I believe in a God of love. I believe that life is a gift given to us by the hand of divine love. This beautiful, amazing earth, this universe, all of it, to nurture our lives and bring us joy. So where does that leave us with loss and pain and agony and horror that so often comes to us through the living of our lives? One thing we see in the face of loss, especially abrupt, unexpected loss, is how amazing and precious it is that we are here right now, in this moment, taking this breath. Loss shows us that life can be so fleeting and fragile, and yet we're here right now. We're experiencing this incredible miracle, this gift. Part of what makes life so precious, with its beauty, love, attachments, abilities, accomplishments, and joys, is that our experience is temporary. It's limited. And yet we're given these moments of stunning joy. If we live forever, and everyone lived forever, forget about the practical implications, would we really be enthralled by the miracle of it all? Loss makes all of it more precious and amazing and meaningful. Another dimension of loss is that it brings people together. Yes, it's painful. Yes, it can be devastating. Yes, you may be bereft. Yes, you may be angry and never the same again. But think about it. So often, loss brings us together. It's something that everyone experiences in this life. Rich, poor, across language, culture, lifestyle, we all experience loss. And this can create common ground for us to experience the oneness of our humanity and the gift of life. Sometimes after a disaster or tragedy, a US president goes to visit the site, and we see the US president, the most powerful person in the land, talking to a mom or a truck driver. Loss can bring us together in unexpected circumstances with unexpected people, and it can bring us closer to those we already know and love. Going through loss together can strengthen our bonds. While society may promote eternal youth and may downplay or minimize death, we talk about someone passing or making their transition, often because we don't want to say they died or use the word death. I got a text once from a friend who's a Newfoundland dog breeder, and she gave me a report about how things had gone for her dogs at a recent dog show. She mentioned that we lost Zemi. I thought she meant the dog got away somehow. But no, Zemi had died over the weekend from a random, unexpected onset of some medical condition. Lost. Yes, a loss, a death, always a loss, among the many other losses that characterize the precious living of our days. A folk tale tells us that once a widow's son died in a tragic accident, leaving her alone. The woman, crazy with grief, mourned her loss so deeply, no one could provide her with comfort. At last, a friend took her to the house of a holy man where she made a sobbing plea. Use your powers to bring my son back to life. Surely you're able by prayer or some magic to induce the Almighty to lighten my grief. The old man spoke kindly to the woman. Bring me a mustard seed from a home that has never known sorrow. I will use that seed to remove the pain from your life. Well, immediately the woman set out in search of this magic mustard seed. First, I'll visit the home of a wealthy family. She thought tragedy is less likely to strike them. So she approached a beautiful mansion, knocked on the door, and spoke to the woman who greeted her. I'm in search of a home that has never known sorrow. Is this such a place? Please, it's vital that I know. Never known sorrow, cried the woman who answered the door. You have come to the wrong house. As she sobbed, she began to describe all the tragedies that had touched her family. She invited the widow into her home and shared with greater detail what had taken place. The widow remained with them for many days, listening and caring. When she left to resume her search, the widow visited a modest home close by, and the experience was the same. Wherever she traveled, from mansion to hut, she was greeted with tales of sadness and sorrow. Everyone found her a willing and careful listener. After many months, she became so involved with the grief of others, she forgot about her search for the magic mustard seed, never realizing that it had indeed driven the sorrow from her own life. Loss is a source of our connection as finite creatures. It bonds us and helps us to see the preciousness of our random, brief experience on this earth. To me, every loss in the great ecology of the divine imagination can be a seed. It can be something that leads to growth or to change, something that bears fruit in our lives. Maybe a loss reminds us to do something that's important to us now. Don't put it off. Maybe the loss brings us closer to God, for how else could we have come through? Maybe the loss strengthens a relationship. Maybe a loss gives us a new compass for our lives. In the reality of divine love, loss helps us to grow, to live more deeply and with greater joy. Loss helps us to understand, to see differently, to connect, to resurrect. Loss is difficult, but it's also a gift. That shows how incredible and amazing we are as a species. Not because we have the ability to make $1 million or $1 billion, but we are such an amazing species because of our ability to continue to take breath and live and love after we've experienced unimaginable loss. That makes us amazing. This brings us together, this manifestation of our common humanity. And this is what tethers us to the source of life, to God. The capacity to live through the incredible losses of this life must come from a love greater than our wildest imaginings, and we call this love and this power God. In 1954, the great French painter Henri Matisse died at the age of 86. In the latter years of his life, he experienced loss. Arthritis crippled and deformed his hands, making it painful for him to hold a paintbrush. Yet, he continued to paint, placing a cloth between his fingers to keep the brush from slipping. One day, someone asked him why he submitted his body to such suffering. Why did he continue to paint in the face of such great physical pain? And Matisse replied, "The pain passes, but the beauty remains." Amen.